All yours.
Great. Thank you so much, Christy. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrea Pritt, and I am this year's Connect and Communicate series coordinator. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for Engagement and Community Among Student Workers, a library success story. This discussion will be recorded and it will be made available to the Pennsylvania Library Association's College and Research Division members through the PALA CRD YouTube channel, as well as sent to registrants and available on our CRD blog. For this discussion, you will only need a headset and speakers. We encourage you to ask questions in the chat box at bottom right throughout the discussion. And our presenter today has elected to answer questions at the end of the session. So please do feel free to type them into the chat and we will ask our presenter after the presentation. We will also do our best to assist participants with any technical issues. So please post those issues in the chat box as well, and we will do our best to help you out. This session is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Library Association College and Research Division's Connect and Communicate series. So I'd like to thank the CRD board for supporting the Connect and Communicate initiative and the other members of our Connect and Communicate planning team, including Christy Adelman-Ritter, Ronali Sioko, Amy Snyder, and Adam Balchunas. You are welcome to contact any one of the team members for information about becoming a PALA member. This project is made possible by a grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services as administered by the Pennsylvania Department of Education through the Office of Commonwealth Libraries and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, Governor. So finally, I'd like to thank and introduce our presenter for today's event. Kim Kareem is the Library Services Specialist at John G. Snowden Memorial Library at Lycoming College in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. Kim's main responsibilities include supervising the circulation desk, carrying out library procedures and policies, and managing student employees. In addition to this, she coordinates and maintains the use of library facilities by serving as the primary liaison to the campus community. So welcome everyone, and Kim, with that, I will turn the presentation over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I'm gonna share my screen. So give me one moment. Now, we need to make sure everybody can see the presentation. Okay. How's that looking?
Great. We can see your slides.
See my slides. All right, great. Okay, I'll go ahead and get started then. All right, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here, and I want to thank everybody for attending this presentation. I also want to thank the Connect and Communicate coordinator, Andrea, for the opportunity to speak here today. I hope that you will be able to follow along easily with my slides and content as I navigate through a topic, which I am very passionate about. I will do my best to answer any questions you have at the end, and I will also provide my contact information if you would like to reach out in the future. I apologize in advance if I fumble a bit with the technology, but I will do my best to take all those errors in stride and not keep you hanging on too long. So what will we be talking about today? My presentation titled Engagement and Community Among Student Workers, a Library Success Story, will dive into the various ways that my student circulation assistants have been engaged in their jobs here at Snowden Library. I will talk about previous methods of engagement and current strategies that we use today. I will go over initiatives that have worked well and some that have not. I will then talk about how we updated our training methods, going from on-the-job training to dedicated training sessions before the start of the fall semester. This is really where I will get excited because I feel like this change in training paved the way for the next part of the presentation, which is the enhanced community among our student staff. I will talk a little bit about how the atmosphere has changed from when I started at Snowden Library and what it's like now. It's been an exciting change over the years for sure. Finally, I will go over some ideas that I have for the future including diving deeper into initiatives that our students have asked for and some ideas that we have come up with on our own to implement. And I just want to make a quick note that the information on student library employment is limited to circulation assistants and our student proctors. While we have student workers in other parts of the library, these strategies were geared toward circulation assistants only. All right, let's get to it. So first, I want to give you a little background on my institution in the library, which I have lovingly walked into at least 5 days per year for the last 5+ years. Lycoming College is a private liberal arts institution located in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. And our claim to fame is the Little League World Series, and we take that fame very seriously. Our college's enrollment is roughly 1,100 students from the United States and about 16 other countries. We are mainly a residential campus, and that means in the depths of a cold winter, we do not get any snow days. John G. Snowden Memorial Library was founded in 1968 and is my favorite building on campus. We currently have 8 full-time staff, 9 actually. We have a 9th one starting in January, which is included 4 librarians and 5 technicians. We have 15 circulation assistants to cover the 80+ hours a week that we are open. We also have 2 student proctors who help supervise in the evenings as well. We offer very limited services to the community and our alumni, such as book borrowing and copying. Our collections include 2 full floors of the traditional Library of Congress classified material, but we also have a leisure reading collection, DVDs, and board games, just to name a few others. Student engagement. So what do I mean when I use that phrase? To me, it's the ways in which I keep my students interested in their job, their responsibilities, and how they are interacting with our patrons and also with each other. Some methods of previous strategies are listed on this screen. When I started my position here in 2018, there was a bulletin board in the circulation area with the words "caught being good" on it. The idea behind this board was taken from a book aptly titled Fish and includes ways to boost morale and improve results in employees, not necessarily geared toward higher education student employees, just employees in general. Each time a student was observed going above and beyond their job duties, a paper cutout fish with their name on it and a description of what they had done was posted on the bulletin board for everyone to see. I liked this idea of positive reinforcement. Other library staff were encouraged to fill out a fish for any student they wanted to give a shout out to. Other ways that students were kept engaged was through quizzes on Moodle, which is our college's course management system. Example quizzes included Where Is It?, which listed spaces or collections within our library, and students had to pick which floor it was on. Another example was a multiple choice quiz on procedures for Easy Borrow and interlibrary loan. That one was to help students brush up on their knowledge of our lending services. We also had a forum on Moodle where students could create a post asking for somebody to take their shift for them. This forum was really not effective for students to get a response quickly. And if it wasn't monitored by me, then shifts would not get taken care of. So it was not a good way to communicate at all. We also have student meetings once per semester, where as many circulation assistants gather as possible. We go over important information and try to have a guest speaker, such as a director of public safety or an advisor from our academic experiences office, come and talk to the students. And we really try to make those sessions library oriented in some way for our student employees. So some other initiatives that my students have helped with in the past are outreach events in the library, and they're hosted at various times through the semester. The weekend before our fall semester begins, the library hosts an orientation event for first-year students. We have food and drinks and games set up all over the first floor. It's kind of an all-hands-on-deck event for the library staff, and we ask our library students if they are interested in helping with the event if they're on campus. Another outreach event, which we no longer do, is Harry Potter Night. This event was very labor intensive and would often require our circulation assistants to be involved with prepping decorations and props in the weeks leading up to this event. The library was transformed into a wizarding world of Harry Potter magic, which is fabulous if you are familiar with Harry Potter. And if not, like me, then you're just kind of lost. But we would have students help make decorations or fill bags, whatever needed to be done. Our biggest event of the year, which is coming up in just 3 or 4 days for us, is Snowed Until Late, which is held on the Friday before our finals week begins in the fall. For this event, we invite faculty to host a study session for their classes in preparation for finals. Again, prep leading up to this event requires some help from our circulation students, and we also ask them to help staff the event. We recruit a student to wear a Snowden snowman costume, which can be seen in the photo on this slide. Now, that's my daughter in the picture, who is not yet a college student, but it was a cute photo, so I couldn't resist putting it on the screen. In addition to asking circulation students to staff the event, they also sign up to work later hours at the circulation desk because the library has extended hours that night and for several days after that due to the higher demand of students needing a space to study. So I want to point out that at this point, there was not a high emphasis on social media content put out by students, meaning my first semester here as with me working here. The library had an active Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter account, but it was run by library staff and not the students. So we eventually turned the content on Instagram over to a student worker not in my department because a comment was made that our Instagram page looked like it was run by old people. So we decided to make a change there. But at this point in 2019, there wasn't much interaction or engagement with our circulation students on those platforms. So going through all of that and giving you background on methods that were in place when I began my position here, I want to talk about some of my own strategies I implemented and experimented with. My previous position before coming to Lycoming College entailed working with high school students in a retail setting. So transitioning to college students took some getting used to. I had the support of my supervisor at the time to try new methods of interaction, so that's what I did. The first initiative I tried, I called fittingly the Student Engagement Weekly Plan. As shown in the example on the screen, hopefully you can read the small writing there. I typed up a 6-week plan that featured a different activity each week. Once a week, I sent out a weekly update through email, and included in that was the activity for the week that I wanted the students to participate in. For example, my very first activity entailed watching a short video on customer service and answering 3 very simple questions. Looking back at previous data, I kept on the responses. I had 9 of 21 students participate in the activity. I urged students to participate in these activities, but there was no real enforcement on my part if they didn't. After introducing the activities to students for 6 weeks, I had 3 students who completed each one. I rewarded them with a certificate of completion, which I made myself, and a Dunkin' Donuts gift card. I was hoping the chance to win free coffee would be enticing enough to get students to do the activities, but only 3 did all 6. One semester, I gave the students who participated each week personalized Post-it notes with their name on it that I created on Shutterfly, and I paid for out of my own pocket. This initiative I continued for several semesters with a break in 2020 because of the global pandemic. As things changed within our library, including staffing issues and additional responsibilities added to my job, I slowly stepped away from this initiative. Overall, I consider bringing it back, but use a different method of communication for the students instead of email. Another method of keeping students interested here at Circulation included a prize box for students who did something positive and going above and beyond. This was implemented during the height of the pandemic because our interaction was little to none due to social distancing. Training new students during this period, much like teaching in the classroom, was very difficult. So to boost morale in some small way, I had students who were copying good because we still had the fishboard in circulation, pick small prizes to keep. things like page tabs, erasers, mini trinkets. I will say it wasn't a huge incentive for students to go above and beyond their job duties for a pack of sticky notes, but I still tried to keep them interested anyway. I do not have the prize box anymore, but I periodically bring in candy or snacks for my students, and that seems to keep them really happy. A few other methods I used, I have listed here. I created a crossword puzzle search using a free online generator and had students fill those in. The puzzle was library themed, of course, and the word search was about collections within our library. Just little ways to keep students involved in their job, keep up with library talk and lingo, which we all know is a thing, while also showing students basic job comprehension. Can you follow the directions of your supervisor? It seems like such a simple thing, but I tested my students on that, and I still currently do. We also did small crafts at the circulation desk. We purchased wooden stars and pumpkins, to name a few, and had students decorate them and hang them in the circulation area. That was probably the most successful. Students enjoyed being creative and getting to show off that creativity with markers and stickers. So I was on the right track with positive reinforcement and ongoing training methods, but something was just missing. Even before the pandemic slowed things down for us, there just wasn't that connection between students that I was hoping for. Their interaction with each other in the library, it just wasn't there. As I mentioned earlier, the communication tool they used to ask for subs for their circulation desk shifts was dated and slow, and it didn't leave room for the students to reach out to each other effectively and efficiently when they needed to. They could only text the students' phone numbers that they had. And this lack of interaction made me think back to my experience as a library worker when I was in college in the early 2000s. I remember making friends with the students I saw most often in the library, and even coming in when I wasn't on duty just to chat or hang out near the front desk. I became close with one student and even lived with her during the summer while I worked on campus in the library. I have fond memories of my supervisor and how I really enjoyed seeing her and even poking fun at her for playing computer games during my shifts. I had a great experience as a library worker, and I truly wanted that for my students as well. I wanted their experience here to be more than just checking books out and helping patrons. I wanted them to form bonds with their peers and have a sense that they made a difference while performing their job duties. I wanted them to know that they were valued not only by me, but by the entire library staff. And I was on the right track, but you still had a lot of work to do. If any of you happen to have been at the Access Services and Libraries Annual Conference in Atlanta 3 weeks ago and attended a session on student employees, then some of this may sound familiar. Along with my supervisor, the head of Access Services, I did a presentation on how we improved our student training for circulation assistants and our student proctors. We went very in depth with our process for that, which I won't do here, but I will go over some of the most important information and why it played a very integral role in creating a better environment here for our students. So improving initial training methods and ongoing training is something it's always on my mind, as was made evident by some of the initiatives I mentioned just a little bit ago. But prior to the fall of 2022, training our new student hires was on the job. So I would start with a checklist with their very first shift. And then their next shift, we go over some more information until eventually they received all the info they needed. This would often take 3 to 4 weeks, depending on how many shifts they had with me per week. I did not schedule them for any evening or weekend shifts, as I did not want them to have a shift by themselves and not feel ready to answer any questions. This often happens in retail. Having just left that environment, I did not want to continue that trend with my new career. Anyway, this training method was extremely time consuming for me, especially at a hectic time during the beginning of the semester. Information I was saying was getting lost in my exchanges with new students. So the quality of training they were getting was not where it should have been. A few times I had to reach out to returning students and ask them to work with a new student, but that wasn't very often. Another reason we updated our training methods was because we transitioned our evening proctor position from hiring outside of our college to having students in that role. Really, our proctors could be called student supervisors because they help keep things under control when library staff are not here. The head of access services for us was always responsible for supervising our two proctors. And when we made those two positions student led, we needed a better way to integrate their responsibilities into a better training format. Our next reason for changing training was because our students just didn't know each other very well. Some may have had classes together or were in the same club or sorority, but there was no connection between students that worked during the day or in the evening. I touched on this a little bit earlier and related it to my experience as a library student employee. Aside from getting the students together once per semester for a meeting, they were not together as a group. And along with the divide between our students, there was a divide between students and our full-time library staff. A previous employee used to take headshots and create a poster with our students' names and faces on it, but we stopped doing that during the pandemic because all of us were wearing a mask, and it just didn't make sense to do that anymore. Our library staff really didn't know the students, and the students didn't know who they were, even our librarians, or understand what everyone's role was within the building. How did we fix this? Well, we upgraded our student training. I say majorly upgraded our student training. Tori, who is my supervisor and the head of access services, and we implemented a group training format for our students before the start of the fall 2022 semester. A lot of work went into prepping for this format of training, including bi-weekly meetings between the two of us, brainstorming activities, outlining what we were going to talk about, and communicating with other departments we needed to work with. It was a lot of work. As we went along, we knew this format would benefit the students greatly. We just had to execute the sessions properly. Students would be together in one group and would get all the information at the same time. This prevented one student from hearing one thing from me and then another student hearing the same thing in a different way. It was going to be much more effective and efficient training for those students. And students would be able to absorb all the information and be engaged in our sessions and activities. Instead of me, yapping in their ear individually for hours at a time, they got to hear both Tori and I yap at the front of the room, but in a much better environment. But seriously, having somebody to share the training with and teach students the ins and outs of their job was extremely helpful. Having the students together in a group like this was an excellent way for them to get to talk and get to know each other. Previously, a student working at 7:30 in the morning might never see a closing student that works until 11 p.m. With this training, they got to meet and chat and know their peers. This group setting was also a chance for Tori and I to learn more about our students, including their preferred names and pronouns. This was not a way we had ever interacted before, but it was clear we desperately needed this improvement for our students. After the first day, we noticed students interacting better with each other. They were making connections, and that really made me happy because we were creating the community that I truly wanted for our students. So some examples of hands-on experience and activities we did during our training are listed on the screen. Our initial icebreaker activity allowed us to learn our students' hometowns, pronouns if they choose to share, and why they decided to attend our institution. Most, if not all of our students felt comfortable sharing this information with the group. We had a shelving activity that went along with our session dedicated to learning the Library of Congress classification system. Students were split up into 4 small groups, and each group had a cluster of 10 books with very similar call numbers that they had to put in call number order. As each group completed, I would check their work and see if it was correct. Students had fun with that because they got real experience putting books in order and got the chance to work together and ask questions amongst their group. Along with this hands-on activity, we practiced checking a book out and checking it back in and did shift walkthroughs for our various shifts. Opening students learned how to check our book returns and how to process our daily newspaper. Closing students learned where light switches are and how to shut down the circulation area. Students commented on how this was very helpful to have the opportunity to do this hands-on and as a group so they could ask questions if they needed to. They also learned what other students they could reach out to for help, such as the person working before them or after them. We also quickly ran through some customer service scenarios where we gave the group an example of a question they might get asked at the circulation desk, and then we asked them how they might respond to that question. We had one student that was very chatty, though, unfortunately, so these scenarios had to go really quickly, but we did manage to get a few of them. Our community among student assistants. So how it started, as I've commented several times in this presentation, the community between our students wasn't there for the longest time. The reasons I have listed here on the screen I have already touched on, but just to recap a bit, our student employees were only together as a group once per semester, and they had little interaction between their shift exchanges. They were somewhat reluctant to ask for help from each other because they really didn't know each other. Our newly transitioned proctor position had the potential to create a disconnect between those two students and our circulation employees. Lastly, the trust between myself and my students, especially those that I didn't see in the evenings or on the weekends, it was not very strong. As we completed our first group training in the fall of 2022, we really saw an immediate payoff as our students became a closer knit group. The information they received during training, it was really absorbed, and our services really improved because of this. They were asking more questions if they didn't know the answer, and they remembered how to access our physical manuals and online resources. Tori and I started coming up with new initiatives and methods of engagement, which I will talk about here shortly. The community really improved greatly, and this made my heart very happy. As a supervisor, I've always tried to be aware of the effect my supervision has on my students. And as I learned more about my students through our new training and activities, that bond between us became even stronger. One of my students suggested in the fall of 2022 changing the way in which students ask for substitutes for their circulation desk shifts. As I mentioned earlier, we used an online forum, but switched away from that and we created a GroupMe chat. Most students already had this app on their phone for various other reasons, so it was easy to get everybody on board with using it. This chat is monitored by Tori and I, so we know what's going on as far as desk coverage, but we also use it to communicate time-sensitive information to our students. The students use it for shift coverage, letting each other know if they're going to be a couple minutes late for a shift. They also use it to post funny pictures on occasion. Something as simple as creating this chat has improved our community greatly, and it was completely free. Having an easy way to communicate with each other has really helped foster a sense of closeness with our students that just wasn't there before. It's really been remarkable how our students have bonded in recent semesters. I'm proud of the dynamic that we've been able to create without losing a sense of the ultimate purpose that we're here for, which is to promote and execute our services to the college community. Why is this important for our library? Well, that really was a whirlwind of information that I just spouted off there, but I think it's important to express why this is important for John G. Stone Memorial Library. Why is it important to enhance training and improve relationships with student employees? If you're going to put a lot of time and energy into improving these areas of employment, the hope is that you see a return on your investment. In this case, I want to know that not only are our student employees thriving, but so are the patrons that we are serving. There's no doubt a lot of commentary on how the library is the heart of the college campus. And here at Snowden Library, we would certainly agree that that is the case. We're very biased that our building is the best place on campus, but with very good reason. Our space, aside from the structural issues that we in no way have control over, is welcoming of all students, due in large part to our student employees. They help set the tone for a welcoming and inclusive environment for our campus population. Our student employees are involved in many other campus activities, and it's almost a given that they will see somebody they know personally walk through the door during one of their shifts. It's not uncommon for me to come back from a lunch break and return to my work area, which is right behind where our student employees sit, and see multiple students standing around the circulation area having a conversation. Again, there has to be that balance there, right? So I do have to do the stereotypical shh every now and then, but the students understand that and they take it in stride. I do probably let my students push the boundary of chatting just a little bit at the desk, though. I do admit that. But that energy they bring to their job, it really does filter through the library. It certainly helps our gate counts when students come into the library, specifically to see our student employees working at the desk. Now, if we can just get each of those visiting students to check out a couple of books, that would probably also boost our circulation counts, but that's a work in progress. But the connection our students have with their peers that visit the library and the support system they have with each other has really improved the atmosphere within our walls. As I mentioned before, it's also improved the relationship that I have with them. And I think that's really important as their supervisor. So I'm not just teaching them about the Library of Congress or the policy for how long a certain book in a collection can be checked out for. Those procedures are absolutely important, yes. But I also serve as a mentor, a cheerleader, a shoulder to lean on after a bad day, a sympathetic ear after a hard test. I've allowed my students to practice their presentations on me, ask me research questions, and give me their short stories to read and give them feedback on. Without a doubt, this has contributed to students often calling the library the best place to work on campus. I'm very proud of that. Students with other jobs comment to me that they prefer to work here. I suspect the downtime and ability to get homework done helps with some of that, but it's not all. Our employees help each other out, they're kind to each other, and they all get along. In return, our services get a boost because of this. We've also noticed in recent years a small uptick in students pursuing their master's in library science because of the positive experience they've had as a student employee here. So in order to keep our employees interested, we've implemented some new initiatives and activities in the past few semesters. Our biggest engagement activity has been having students help pick books for a monthly display that we set up on the first floor of our library. We started this in the spring of this year, and the first one we did was Blind Date with a Book in February. This was a huge success. It could be a display that you've seen at a public library as well. But our student employees each got to pick a book from our collection, cover it, and decorate it how they wished. Our students enjoyed getting to be creative, and the interaction from our patrons was also wonderful. We had approximately 30 books checked out from this display alone, which for us is awesome. We had to keep wrapping more books as the week went on. We've done other displays as well for Women's History Month, Rainbow Book Month, and National Poetry Month, just to name a few. But our students are involved in those as long as they're on campus. Another initiative has been asking our student employees to help decorate the library for various holidays. So far, I had a group of circulation students decorate for Halloween. And most recently, we hosted a holiday helper party in which students put ornaments on our holiday tree. We asked for donations from staff to feed the students and provided them with a fun craft they could make and also a pin the nose on the reindeer game. Both of those activities went very well and cost us very little out of our supply budget, which I think is important to mention. Two initiatives we implemented for our circulation employees was doing an hourly patron headcount and also recording questions they receive while working at the circulation desk. And we started that last fall. To my surprise, when we started doing the headcount, students actually enjoy getting up to walk around and see who is in the library and see what they're doing. We got a lot of great data from implementing these two initiatives that we have been able to use to help make improvements to our services and also use on our annual statistical reports. The last two things I want to mention here is something that I use the GroupMe chat for, which is creating polls that our students can provide feedback on, such as adding a new circulation item or improving a service. Because we have the group already set up, our student employees know best what other students their age would like to see. So we often seek feedback from them on what we can do to make services better. They always have an opinion, always. So my last slide is a brief list of what I have for the future and some areas to focus on as we keep moving forward. Our institution recently hired a chief diversity officer. So I hope to get some feedback from her on ways we can be more intentional about diversity, equity, and inclusion when it comes to hiring, onboarding our student employees, and improving our customer service. Another thing that we have had a few of our students ask about is team building activities. We've tossed a few ideas around, such as visiting a local farm during the fall or taking trips to other libraries, or even visiting the Library of Congress and the National Archives. Works in progress. But as you know, it's never just that simple. There's money that must come from someplace to execute that. So those ideas are still in the works. I've recently done some self-evaluations with a few of my students that I do with the new hires, and each and every one of them has said team building activities. We want to bond more. So I know we're on the right track with getting some ideas for things we can do there. Our staff has also discussed having students help plan outreach events. We have a really great outreach librarian here at Snowden Library, so a possible collaboration there would really be beneficial for our future. An area that I've struggled with since I've had this position is employee evaluations. Recently, I was able to implement a system that includes a self-evaluation for new hires and a rubric evaluation for returning students. But I like to keep making that system better. Students deserve to know how they are performing, and so that's an area I hope to keep making better. A few other ideas that have been tossed around for our student employees include a book sale manager or possible summer internships. We have plenty of withdrawn materials, as most academic colleges do, that we try to put up for sale at least once per semester. And having a student be in charge of that would be a great way to help full-time staff. Our campus also provides students with internship opportunities on campus during summer break. So we're attempting to figure out if we can have that brought here to our library. That idea is really in the very, very early stages, but it's always nice to be thinking about new ways that our students can benefit from being here at Snowden Library. So that was my presentation. Thank you all so much for attending and listening to all of my wonderful ideas that I think I have for my students. So I'm ready to answer questions if there are any.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kim. I encourage attendees, feel free to type your question into the chat and I can read them for Kim to answer, or if you want to raise your hand and unmute yourself to ask a question, you're welcome to do that as well. Before we begin, we do have some questions that came through our registration form before today's session. I want to mention that a link to the evaluation survey will be placed in the chat as we start the Q&A period now. It's important that you please take, just a few quick minutes to submit your responses, as we are required to submit the evaluation data as a part of our grant application. I will type the form and the link in the chat here. It's an anonymous form, so please don't, worry about that your name would be tied to it or anything like that. Kim, we have some comments in the chat. Thank you very much for sharing your ideas. It's really helpful. I would totally agree. I know that I mentioned this to you before today's session, but I used to supervise our student workers in a different library. And after seeing your presentation, I miss it because it sounds like there's a lot more or cooler, more fun things that I could have been doing with my students. But for the first question I want to ask you that came through before the session, could you please talk a little bit more about how you built these initiatives into a sustainable, thriving program? and I will type that question in the chat as well.
Yeah. So I think first of all, it's important to mention that I had support from my supervisor at the time to try these initiatives. I guess if you don't have the support from your immediate supervisor or even your library administration, it might be hard to try to implement changes. But first and foremost, I had the support of my supervisor. So I guess because some of the initial things that I did for student engagement, I don't continue to do, I didn't really work them in so much semester after semester after semester because we were trying new things. So I just feel like you kind of have to go with the flow too of what your students are responding to. Um, the first couple semesters, I did the student engagement weekly plan, for example. My students, I had 9 of 21 students actually do some of the activities. So that's sort of close to half. That was pretty good. As the semesters wore on, that engagement just got a little bit less and a little bit less. So I wasn't seeing that return on investment. So then I had to come up with a new idea. By this point, then I had a new supervisor who I currently work with. And I told her, okay, I want to try some new things. I want to do this. I want to do this. And again, I had awesome support and I still do. So, like I said, I think you just have to go with the flow of what your students are doing and kind of pivot and change when you need to. So I hope that kind of answers that question.
That's great. Thank you.
Mhm.
We had another question come through. It's, what are some project ideas you suggest for students to complete during slow times while at the circulation desk?
Okay. So I know I mentioned that we have a hourly patron head count. That was specifically implemented because we wanted to get our students more active during their shift. So if you don't have something like that, I would highly recommend formulating some kind of hourly head count. There's another department on our campus, our recreation center, that does something similar to this. It gets the students up and moving. It gets them aware of, how many students are in the building, what kinds of things are they doing. And like I said, I didn't really think my students would like to get up in the middle of their shift. We usually they work in about 2-hour chunks at a time. I didn't think they'd like it. They love it. It's like the one thing. Like as soon as they come into the circulation desk, they plop their bag down. They're like, okay, I gotta go do the hourly head count. I'm like, you're just so excited about doing that. So look at something like that to get your students up and out of their chair. For us, because my desk is behind where they sit, we kind of have to make sure that there's at least somebody covering the circulation desk. So they know, if it's time I'm not there, maybe they just do like the first floor and a little bit of the second floor. So they're not that far from the desk. So that would be a good thing to do. Dare I say crafts? I mean, my students, they really enjoyed the chance to be creative. And show off their cool ideas. So those are just a couple of things I think that you could do. I don't know. Like I said, it's another thing you constantly just have to be kind of going with the flow with them, seeing what they're into, and then just brainstorming some things that you think you can have them do if it works, within your library.
That's great. Thanks. And
Mhm.
I can recall kind of a familiar thing, like when I would supervise student workers, like we had a few who just loved refilling our printer paper. It was like they
Oh,
drop their
yes.
bags and then go get, it was
Yep.
great.
Yep. They like that too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Tracy has a comment in the chat. Yes, great ideas. I'm glad that you do let the kids talk at the desk to their friends. I think it does make a nice atmosphere as long as it's not too much talking.
Yes. Yes. Like I said, I often refer to my student employees as my kids. It's kind of our running joke now. So I do probably let them get away with a little more than they should. But again, we've built that trust and have that great working relationship. And so they know, like, if I shush them, they should shush. Right. And so, yeah, it's great. I love them all.
Thanks. So the last question we had from our registration form before the session is, and I know you touched upon this and how it was really only going to be focusing on circulation
Mhm.
student workers, but someone had asked, would this program, your presentation, also be relevant for supervisors of technical service student workers, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say I have a ton of knowledge on technical services, right? We have an awesome technical services technician here. But yeah, I don't see why, like, especially implementing like a student training program, for example, where they couldn't attend those sessions, right? It's always helpful to learn the Library of Congress. You work in an academic library, you probably should at least know how the books are organized. It's not by color, right? We know there's actually numbers and letters that mean something. So yeah, I feel like you could really develop a training program for different departments within your library. It might not have to be like as extensive as we do at circulation just because of the number of procedures and policies and collections that we have. But yeah, I don't see why not. Again, having that support from your supervisor or library administration, and then brainstorming ideas and going from there. I absolutely think you could do that.
Great, thank you. I am going to, I haven't seen any other questions come through. I'm gonna type in our evaluation form link again for folks, and encourage you to fill that out after today's session or now as we're kind of wrapping up. But Kim, I had a question, and since no one
Sure.
else has asked anything, I'd be curious.
Yeah.
Um, uh, can you talk about any kind of, I know you say you give your students maybe a little more leeway than some other areas on campus might in student worker roles and different things. Have you ever had like a challenging point where a student, who meant well, right, but maybe wasn't doing some of the things you would
Hmm.
ask, or maybe follow some of your, I don't want to call them rules, but like guidelines as a worker? And can you talk about like how you may have
Yeah.
dealt with that, I
I
guess?
can. I had a student employee, she decided not to come back for us this semester, but just one of the nicest students that I've had a chance to work with. But unfortunately, when she would work during the day, she was very often late for her shifts. Sometimes it starts out as a couple minutes and then it gets to like 5 minutes and then 15 minutes and then she was just not showing up because she wasn't getting up in time. So I've been very fortunate to have great student workers since I've been here, but there have been a few times where I have to be the supervisor and have those uncomfortable conversations. Um, so with support from my supervisor, I had to have a talk with this student in the spring, and it was just like, listen, I've already given you one warning about being late. I haven't seen improvement. We're going to have to take the next step. I had to give her a formal warning because she was just being late. And within that conversation, I think I was really hoping to give her an opportunity to kind of open up to me. And it was clear she was struggling, right? Whether that was with just an overwhelming amount of schoolwork or personal issues, whatever it was, she was struggling. And I hoped that we could come together and she could kind of talk about that. Didn't really get much out of her with that conversation. So yeah, there has been a time or a couple of times, like I said, I've been extremely lucky that I've had to put on that true supervisor hat and have those uncomfortable talks. And I'll be honest, I still do struggle with that a little bit because I have a soft spot for all these kids. Um, but each time that I have to do this, it helps me grow as a supervisor and helps me learn ways to approach the students. Like, I don't want to come down on them and yell at them. That's not gonna, right? They're not gonna get anything out of that. It's not gonna strengthen the bond that I have with them. So just finding ways to talk to them and kind of going forward.
Great, thank you so
Mhm.
much. I don't see any attendees with hand raised or any other questions in the chat, but I'd encourage folks to do that. Type something in if you have a question. I will maybe ask one more because I'm
Sure,
also curious for this, Kim. So
yeah,
sorry. I hope
that's okay.
folks should feel encouraged, so I don't keep asking my own questions. But can you talk about just maybe briefly? I know you touched upon it in your presentation. I know I had struggled with like, yeah, assessment, kind of feedback, figuring out like, I was also a supervisor who at the beginning had like a running checklist of things, and I was going to teach them how to do all these things. We
Yep.
check it off and move along, and it was sort of not performative, but I was maybe just going through the paces because it was what was there before
Yes,
I got there.
exactly.
Um, and it was sort of difficult for me to maybe like ask our students, encourage them, like, you can be open and tell me what isn't working or
Mhm.
what you really liked about this way that I'm training you versus that. So can you just briefly talk about maybe like some feedback your students have given you as like, oh, Kim, maybe this doesn't work for me? Or like, do they talk about that with you at all?
Yeah, and so in the self-evaluation form that I give my first semester hires, we ask them those very questions, how do you feel you did? Um, what are some things that you like about your job? What do you find most challenging? A lot of them say like navigating our library website or helping somebody order a book through Easy Borrow or interlibrary loan. So we're very intentional when we plan our student training in the fall to make sure we go over those specific things. um, we did an expectations exercise in our student training about expectations that our students have for each other, expectations they have for us as their supervisors, expectations they have between themselves. So we do get feedback there. We get ideas of things that we can go over with them. But Tori and I, my supervisor, we always encourage the students to come to us. If something is not working, we can't fix it or we can't address it if we don't know. So we always encourage them to come to us and let us know when something it just isn't working. So, like I said, I asked them those questions in the self-evaluation form. And then our returning students, I have more of a rubric guideline that I follow, where it's kind of me saying, okay, here's what I've observed you doing. It's working or it's not working, which is where I struggled with like that constructive criticism because I said I have such a soft spot for them. That's still an ongoing thing for me. I'm working on that. But they did tell us that they want to know when they're doing something wrong. So I just tell them, hey, look, you're not approaching this the right way. Again, I'm very fortunate with a great group of students, and um, so I don't have to do it too often. But yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it really does. Thank
Okay.
you. And
Yeah.
it sounds um like a lot of things you'd think of when it's maybe
Yeah.
a student's first job ever, or
Yes.
they're at college, they're maybe the first time they've been away from their family or
Hmm.
friends, that kind of
Yep.
thing.
Yep.
We do have
Absolutely.
another question in the chat. How
Okay.
many students report to you on a semester basis?
Well, currently I have 15 circulation assistants this semester. That can vary. I've had as low as 12 during the height of the pandemic. I've had as many as 21 my first semester on campus in 2018. I had a month to learn all the policies and procedures and everything about Snowden Library. And then I also had to train 9 new student employees that semester. That's the most difficult that it's ever been here for me. So new to the job, new to everything, and then teaching 9 students everything that I just learned myself. It was stressful. It's like I said, it's never been that bad. So yeah, I can have anywhere from 12 students to 20. Obviously, I have to work within a budget, right? We all do. Um, so 15 seems to be a really good number for us here. We're, like I mentioned, a smaller institution. We used to have longer hours, but we did shorten them when the pandemic happened. So 15 is pretty average, I would say. And then we have our 2 student proctors who work in the evenings as well, just in circulation. Total, we have 20 student workers in the library.
That's great. Thank you. I know I'm at one of the Penn State University campus libraries, and we have various, large number of libraries across the state. And
Hmm.
I know at like some of our smaller campuses, they may only have 1 or 2 student workers or
Right.
none or things. And I can remember certainly, and I know my current library, Harrisburg Library, we, are working within a budget and looking for
Hmm.
work study students and
Yep.
managing that whole, process. So I really appreciate your time, and I know that we're
Absolutely.
getting close to ending, but as long as Kim is, able to stay for the next few minutes, you're welcome
Sure.
to type in your questions or ask them. But I'd like to thank you all for joining us today, and Kim, thank you very much for
You're very welcome.
presenting.
Yes.
I hope everyone will take a few moments to complete our survey and let us know your thoughts about the presentation today and about our Connect and Communicate series programming in general. As a reminder, the recording of the presentation will be available to PALA members early next week on our YouTube channel. If you are not a PALA member and you are interested in becoming one, please feel free to email me or contact any of the CRD board members or the Connect and Communicate series folks, and we will get back to you. So I also invite you to contact me with your suggestions for future discussions or presentations. And definitely contact me if you would like to present anything. We will be continuing our Connect and Communicate series in 2024. So be on the lookout for that. And again, thank you so much, Kim, for your presentation. It was really great, and I appreciate you doing this for us in December. I know it's getting
Thank
close to
you.
the end of the semester, so we appreciate your time.
You're very
There's a lot of
welcome.
great comments, everyone saying thank you for the session.
Thank you.
So with that, I think we can stop the recording. Thanks so much, Kim.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.